Welcome back to The Explainer. For all of our focused learners out there who love uncovering how vast, complex systems operate, well, today's topic is absolutely fascinating. We're going to look at one of the most massively successful empires in human history. We are talking about a true global juggernaut, the Mughal Empire. At its peak, this single political entity rivaled or even surpassed the wealth of all of Europe combined. We're going to break down exactly how this empire scaled up, managed its incredible wealth, and functioned day to day before its eventual and frankly inevitable decline. So if you want to understand what it actually takes to run a continent-spanning power, you are in the exact right place. Let's get started. Okay, let's dive into this. To truly wrap our heads around the unbelievable scale of the Mughal Empire, we first have to look at the sheer human capital under its umbrella: 150 million. Based on our sources, historians estimate that by the late 17th century, the population of this empire sat somewhere between 100 million and 150 million people. I mean, just think about that for a second. In a world long before modern transportation, digital spreadsheets, or instant communication, you had one centralized political entity managing the lives, the trades, and the taxes of up to 150 million individuals. It's just a staggering fact, and it immediately tells us we aren't just looking at some regional power here. We're looking at a true demographic titan on the world stage. And this brilliantly illustrates what all those millions of people were doing. They were generating immense, world-shifting wealth. In the 17th century, the Mughal Empire accounted for roughly 24% of the entire world's gross domestic product. Really let that sink in. Nearly a quarter of the globe's economic output was concentrated inside the borders of this one empire. While the rest of the world combined made up the remaining 76%, Mughal India stood out as one of the absolute richest, most lucrative economies globally. If you were looking for goods, trade, or just unimaginable economic power in the 1600s, this is exactly where you looked. Managing a quarter of the world's wealth requires some massive, deeply secure territory, which brings us to Section 1, 2 centuries of expansion, tracing the empire's massive footprint. Because, obviously, you simply don't generate 24% of the global GDP by staying small, right? Tracing this across the centuries, the story officially kicks off in the early 16th century with the empire's initial rise in northern India. Over the next several decades, as we move into the late 16th century, we see massive territorial expansion under the ruler Akbar. Then, jumping forward a bit to the late 17th century, the empire hits its absolute peak territorial extent under Aurangzeb. This arc right here represents a really remarkable 2+ centuries of highly effective rule over much of the Indian subcontinent. But, as we know, eventually gravity takes hold. By the mid-18th century, there's a distinct loss of effective rule, and that leads to the empire existing as an increasingly powerless entity, right up until its final definitive fall in the mid-19th century. Understanding this timeline is so vital to grasping how empires breathe, you know? They expand, they peak, and they eventually fracture. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the direct contrast between the empire's two greatest architects of expansion. By the late 16th century, Akbar extended Mughal dominion directly across northern India, stretching all the way from the Bay of Bengal in the east to the Arabian Sea in the west. He effectively secured that vital northern landmass. Then, subsequent rulers kept pushing those frontiers southward, which culminated with Aurangzeb in the late 17th century. Aurangzeb successfully conquered the Deccan Sultanates, and in doing so, he pushed Mughal rule the farthest it had ever gone into the south, bringing the empire to its greatest overall territorial extent. So you have one ruler aggressively securing the sheer width of the north, while the other secured the deep depth of the south. But conquering territory is one thing, running it is a whole different beast. Let's move to Section 2, Administration and Cultural Integration, the secrets to Mughal stability. So the crucial point is that you can win a battle with a great military, sure, but you can only maintain a century of peace and economic dominance with incredible internal mechanics. The secret to their stability really comes down to 3 elements. First, the Mughal dynasty didn't just get lucky once or twice. Remarkably, they maintained a record of unusual talent across 7 continuous generations of rulers. Think of them like an unprecedented succession of highly capable CEOs, with each one building on the foundation of the last. Second, they actively managed their vast territory using a highly effective administrative organization. It was incredibly well structured. And third, perhaps most importantly, they made a deliberate attempt to integrate Hindus and Muslims into a united Indian state. You see, even though the Mughal rulers themselves were Muslim, originally of Turkic-Mongol origin, they totally understood that ruling a massive, diverse subcontinent required unity, not just brute force. That unique blend of administrative brilliance and cultural integration, that was the structural glue holding that 24% of global GDP together. But time is the ultimate test of any organizational system, isn't it? After the mid-18th century, that incredible system began to give way. By the mid-19th century, this once mighty Mughal Empire continued to exist only as a considerably reduced and practically powerless entity. It's a pretty melancholy reality to observe. I mean, literally just moments ago, we were talking about awe-inspiring wealth, an active population of 150 million, and an organizational brilliance spanning multiple generations. Yet eventually, all of that robust infrastructure, all of that unmatched economic dominance, just withered away until the rulers were left completely powerless. Which leads us perfectly to this final lingering thought. How does an empire that holds a quarter of the world's wealth, commanded by generations of brilliant administrators, eventually just lose its power? It's a profound question, really, about the very nature of leadership, economics, and history itself. The sheer scale of the Mughal Empire's rise is truly only matched by the dramatic nature of its eventual fall. I hope this explainer has given you a solid, highly structured foundation on this incredible era, and I really hope it leaves you eager to dig deeper into your own historical research to find the answers to this very question. Thank you for focusing in with me today on the explainer, and as always, keep learning.